This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Lessons Learned. And I have two beautiful people with me. I have Noah and Ray, and I've known Noah for a very long time, probably about 30 years. And I've known Ray through the family for probably about the last 10, maybe 15 years. It's been a long time. Um, and I've seen the growth the two of you have had in your life. You are two very artistic people, and um, you have minds of your own. And I love that because, especially in today's society, we need to. We need to use our brains and our minds. So I'm going to start with you, Ray. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you journeyed to where you are today.
Sure. My name is Ray. I use she or they pronouns. Um, I use them kind of interchangeably, even though, I don't know. I guess I'm still at a point where, I don't know that there's any one set of pronouns that, I 100% vibe with, but she, and they both work. I am non binary, so it's kind of a funky extra gender. um a lot of people say oh, there's a spectrum between being a woman and being a man, and there's other stuff in between, but I like to think of it as, it is a spectrum, but I don't know that it's necessarily like woman here, man here. It's just like there's a whole weird vortex of gender
Sure.
expression, and it's just kind of interesting talking about it because you can ask multiple trans people, multiple non-binary people how they define gender, and no one's going to have the same answer. It is not a monolithic community, and I think we're all still trying to figure it out too.
So, was there a certain time in your life that all of a sudden this all like clicked and you said, you know, this is who I am. I'm not who you all thought I was.
So right when I was about to graduate from college, which was 2015, my undergraduate degree is in filmmaking, and my capstone film that I was doing was about drag queens, just because I have a lot of friends who are drag queens, and we were working on a story, uh, just kind of about what drag means to different people. Because I think the traditional view of drag queens is, oh, it's men who are pretending to be women, and that's not true. But I think in recent years, especially, that has become a lot more of an open-minded genre of performance. And so once we finished the film, we had a big party, we had a lot of drinks going on, and I was just talking to two of my drag queen friends who were in the movie about what gender even was. And I was saying, yeah, I mean, I don't even really like gender. I don't even think I have a gender. And they were like, yeah, you might not have a gender. You might be outside of that whole business. So, to get specific, not having a gender is usually referred to as being agender, but is kind of within the umbrella of being non-binary and being trans. So I'm just standing here talking to two drag queens with a way too much vodka, yelling I think I'm non-binary. And I ended up coming out to some of my friends who were working on the movie a month later, and they said, "Yeah, we know." And I said, "How did you know?" And they said, "You were screaming at the top of your lungs." So that was kind of the uh, inciting incident of my gender exploration journey.
I love that. And Noah, you grew up as a boy. That's how I knew you. And you made the choice to transgender. And um, I'm not going to say I was totally surprised. It was like, okay, that's fine. But When did you realize that as well, that this is who you really are?
Uh, yeah, it's an interesting thing. Well, first off, I want to say transgender isn't a verb, it's an adjective. So
Okay.
I realized that I was transgender. I didn't decide to transgender. But
Okay.
uh, I know you'll often hear in media, kind of the born this way narrative that, I knew, someone will say, I knew since I was little, I was trying on my mom's dresses and makeup and all that. And that really wasn't the case for me. I always knew there was something different about me, something off about me. And I didn't even know that the concept that I might not be a boy was even possible. Like it never entered my mind just because it seemed like so far outside of the realm of possibility. And my only exposure to the idea of a transgender person up until I was in my late teens at least was Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which is a very less than flattering depiction of transgender people. And really, kind of what kind of the phrase we use is what cracked my egg is a few years ago, Ray actually drew a picture of me kind of on a whim of like, hey, what if I drew you if you were a woman? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And, we were just hanging out and Ray showed me the portrait, and I saw it and I began to cry. And I realized that it really hit me that like, oh, this is what I've been missing. That's what I've wanted this whole time and wasn't letting myself feel. And so I was probably what, 26 at the time, 27,
Somewhere around there.
somewhere around there. And that really started, to get me thinking. And then after that, I decided, okay, I can't ignore this any longer. And it really kind of was the impetus after that was, to transition, starting hormones and living full time and changing all of the legal documentation. Is I kind of made a resolution to myself that I want to be a when I enter my 30s, I want to be a woman, and I have done so.
So again, you knew for a very long time that you were something was missing in your life, couldn't identify it. Um, and it took a picture from somebody who you are very close
Hmm.
to like sort of like show you that, well, this could be you.
Yeah.
So the two of you have been together since college, correct?
Since I was in college, yeah, we met. I guess almost 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Where I was finishing up University of Michigan, and Noah was out of college.
And so the two of you met, and you met as boy and girl. And, you know, we saw you as a, what I guess I would call a traditional couple. Um, but the two of you have grown together, and at the same time, you're growing in different directions. So how does that work? Because you hear so many neurotypical uh, male female couples that as soon as they start making any kind of changes, okay, growing their hair long, growing a beard, all of a sudden they go in opposite directions. But you two went in a large direction, and yet you still remain together. How is that?
We like to kind of joke that we've kind of pulled each other upwards through the LGBTQ hierarchy. When I first started dating Ray, we both thought that we were cisgender.
I
Uh,
thought I was straight at the
and
time,
yeah,
even.
they thought they were straight, and I was openly bisexual at the time. Not long after that, Ray kind of just like after we started dating, Ray became more bisexual, but then Ray came out as genderqueer, and then later on, I came out as transgender. So we've been kind of helping each other really along the journey and kind of paving the way for one another in some ways.
Yeah, I think the even outside of us two, 90% of the people who I went to grade school and high school and college with, who I still am friends with, are identify somewhere within the LGBTQ umbrella. And I like to think that even if we didn't totally understand who we were at the time, there was just something different about us that drew us to each other. And it wasn't until later that we realized, oh, we're all queer, we're all trans. And so I don't know. I don't want to say that there's like something atomically different about us, but I just realizing that there were kindred spirits where like, maybe there's something we all haven't figured it out yet. We were drawn to each other to figure it out together.
Yeah.
And that really sounds like what it is, because you would have grown apart if it weren't for that. So you can very easily use the word queer, but if anybody on the outside used that word, it would not be appropriate. So explain to me why in your community you can use, the labeling, whereas we can't.
I think part of what it comes down to is the intention. Like I think if you were, for example, to refer to me as queer after I have just referred to myself as queer, I think that's appropriate. I think it's a label that if you're not in the community, you shouldn't assign it to someone else. But if someone says, hey, I'm queer, then cool. That is the identifier they choose to use. And so in my opinion, I think that is acceptable to use. But I think if a straight person walked into a room, say at a gay bar, and went, hey, queers, I think that would be a totally different situation that would make everyone kind of drop their drinks.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on how people encourage you to refer to them.
Yeah, it's definitely, whenever a term like that is reclaimed, there's always, messy bits. There aren't really hard and fast rules per se. And I remember when I told my father the first time that I said, hey, I think, I identify as queer, he just kind of looked at me for a moment and go, that's a really bad insult, isn't it? And I'm like, I mean, not for me. But again, if somebody were to use that as an insult, I wouldn't mistake their intention. It's always very clear when somebody means it in a derogatory way. But within the LGBTQ community, it's become such a perfect umbrella term for people who don't necessarily fall neatly into a category of LGBT, etc. Because attraction isn't necessarily so simple, and so often, like I said, I'm bisexual, but I've I'm I think I'm mainly attracted to non-binary and people and women, but somewhat to men. And so instead of like trying to really, it's just such a logical term to use of just it's a whole mishmash. It's queer.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if you were to say, and I'm not sure if I'm, you were to say the queer community, you were to say that, most people would know that you weren't using that as an insult.
Okay. Well, and these are the terms that we need to understand so that we aren't insulting each other, and that we can become, that we can communicate and we can, accept each other. So, talking about acceptance, when the two of you went through these changes, um, yours, Ray, in some ways is more of a labeling for your family. It was a little bit more, um, mind blowing in some ways, maybe for your family, Noah. But how did your family react when you said, okay, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So the first person in my family I came out to, first people I should say, were my brother and sister-in-law, who were instantly absolutely accepting. It was really amazing to see. My brother just, said, okay, you're my sister. And that was beautiful. Coming out to my parents was a little more daunting. It's one of those things where it's not that my parents had given me any real specific reason to doubt that they wouldn't be accepting, because they, they'd been accepting when I came out as bisexual earlier on. But you hear stories, you meet people. Most transgender people, when they come out to their family, it doesn't end well for them.
Right.
So I put off coming out to them for a while. I'd been on hormones for at least 6 months at that point. And then we decided, okay, we're gonna, hop on the Zoom call because we were in Chicago and they were in Michigan, and I'm gonna tell them. And it was awkward to say the least. Both my parents are lawyers, and so their first instinct when they learn something like this is they just got to know everything. They're asking questions, things like, okay, you're on hormones. Who's the doctor that put you on hormones? Are you sure about this? What's your, all of these things, just to really kind of peppering me with questions. And it was daunting just because it's not what you want to hear. You want to hear just, I love you and I accept you and I'm there for you. And I know it came from a place of love. It came from a place of concern. And then afterwards, they, the next day, they called me up and said, so we could have a more, a better conversation about it. And my parents actually organized a trip to Chicago to come see me specifically, just so they could, they wanted to see their daughter in person. But the whole time I was so scared just because I still wasn't sure. And I learned later, this fact blew my mind when I found out that an acquaintance of my dad's, he told him, and this acquaintance said, hey, I know, if you want, I know somebody who can essentially kidnap your child and convince them otherwise. So, the fact that which was what I was afraid of. And
Right.
so,
Exactly.
but luckily, obviously my dad did not listen to that man, and yeah, so far he's been, after that initial bumpiness, they've been incredibly accepting and supportive of me.
That is absolutely, and knowing your parents, I wouldn't have expected anything short of that. Um, it has to be difficult for a parent that, you, for 9 months, you carried, a boy, you raised that child as a boy, but that child is still your child, boy or girl. Um, and now your mother has a daughter that she can go shopping with. So
Yeah, it's been, I remember when I first moved into our current apartment, my parents came to help me kind of move in, and my mom brought in a huge duffel bag full of old dresses that she'd collected for me to try on, and
oh,
that
I
was
love it.
one of the most affirming experiences I'd had at that point. It was just me, my mom, and my best friend, just me trying on dresses, and it felt really good.
That is terrific. And Ray, when you told your family, or did you?
I did. I have. So it's kind of an interesting situation because, first of all, I come from an interracial, interfaith household. So my dad is Eastern European Jewish. My mom is Black and Catholic, and my dad is a lot more secular. My mom is a lot more religious, and we were raised Catholic because my mom really pushed for it, and my dad went, okay. And it wasn't until more recently that we've been more embracing being culturally Jewish. None of the kids in my family have gotten converted. One of my siblings is thinking about it, but we were raised with a very Christian mindset.
Sure.
And so when one of my siblings came out as gay in high school, there was a whole to do about that. My mom had to do a lot of soul searching. And then a few years later, I came out to her as bi, and I was like, oh, well, my sibling paved the way. This shouldn't be an issue. No, they had a lot of questions about that. And at the time, they thought I was dating a man, Noah. And so they were like, well, what does this mean? Are you going to break up? Blah, 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 blah. And just all these questions. Like, no, we're not breaking up. We're still vibing. Noah's bi too. I threw her under the bus in that regard. And then I my dad was making jokes about, like, he was saying, well, how did you know you were bi? And I listed a whole bunch of reasons, including just I realized that I am attracted to women. And I mentioned offhandedly part of the reason I decided that it was okay to admit that was watching the series Orange is the New Black.
Okay.
And my dad said, well, looks like we got to cancel our Netflix subscription. And he was fully joking, but I was like,
Okay.
this is not the right time to be joking about that, especially when my mom is having to do more soul searching. And so I had that experience in the back of my mind when I was thinking about coming out to them as non-binary. I was already out to all of my friends, most of my coworkers, my siblings. When I told my sibling who had come out as gay previously, when I told them at the time, I'm gender fluid, they said, I don't remember which one that is, but I love you. And ironically, that sibling is now also non-binary. So again, it's just like the barrel of monkeys. We're dragging each other into being more and more queer. But with all those experiences in my back pocket, I was like, I really am not looking forward to telling them I'm non-binary. But there was a National Coming Out Day in, I think, 2018, I want to say.
Sounds about right.
When I was just so happy seeing everyone making posts about, hey, this is me, this is who I am. So I decided, you know what? I want to make a post too, and I'm going to tell my parents first because I don't want them to find out on Facebook. I was living with them at the time. It would have been absurd if they found out on Facebook. So I told them, and I had actually written a letter to read to them because I wanted to make sure all of the words I said were exactly the words I wanted to say. And my coworker actually gave me the paper to write it on. I wrote it while I was working as a barista at a cafe, and he was helping me figure out the word choice and everything. And so I still have in my drawer somewhere the two little, like, very frou-frou pieces of journal paper that I wrote the letter on. And just because I wanted it to be the three of us, me and my parents, I sent Noa upstairs because she was over at the time. Just and afterwards, my parents were like, "Does Noa not know? Why did you send her away?" It was like, no, I just wanted it to be a private thing. But and again, at the time, they didn't know Noa was a woman either. So, but they ended up being mostly understanding about it. It ended up being an hour-long conversation about basic gender theory. Because, as you say, it was a little bit less of a shock to them as it was to Noa's parents when she came out, because, you know, I'm not taking hormones. I might get, you know, what's called top surgery in the future. So getting a breast reduction. I don't think I'm going to go with removal. We don't need to get into all the surgical topics, but like, I'm already scared of scalpels. I don't need them getting that close to my rib cage. But as you say, it's a little bit less of a shocking transformation, but at least when Noa told her parents she was a woman, they knew what a woman was. When I told them my parents and Noah's parents, that I was non-binary, then you have to kind of get the flashcards out and explain what that even means.
Exactly.
And I think they eventually got there. You know, there's just a lot of terms that we were going over. Is this okay? Is that okay? Like mom saying, can I still call you my daughter? And I decided, yeah, that's fine. And my dad saying, you know, I always call you baby girl. Is that okay? So, ideally, no, but like, I'm not going to tell my dad he can't say it. It's like, it's not baby girl, it's baby girl.
Yeah.
And so we can still deal with that. But generally, anything that's like explicitly gendered in a female way, like woman, girl, I tend to want to avoid those types of things. I guess I'm Noah's partner as opposed to girlfriend, but I do know a lot of non-binary people who like being called girlfriend, even though they are not girls, just because they like the idea of the word girlfriend. And like hypothetically, if I were to get married to a woman, um, I am at this point thinking like I would still kind of like to be referred to as wife, even though I am not a woman, just because there's something very gay about being wives. Like, hello, this is my wife, and I'm her wife, and we're wives.
And I
Like,
like that.
we're gay married.
That is absolutely terrific. You know, as I listen to the two of you, I reflect on a cousin of mine. Um, and Noah, I don't know if you ever met our cousin Stuart. He
I've heard
was
stories.
okay. And when I was 9 years old, I was at their house, and Stuart was the nicest of the three boys. He was the oldest. And he was sitting there playing with me. I think we were playing Monopoly on the floor. And I looked up at him and I said, Stuart, I'm going to marry you someday. And he said, no, you're not. But I'm not going to tell you why today. But someday you will know. And, that's sort of like went off into the distance. And I still was mooning over him until I probably was 17, 18 years old. And I had come back from college, and my brother Gary had gone out with our cousin Stuart the night before. Stuart needed a wingman going to the gay bar. And my brother explains this to me, and I look at him in like awe. That's why he can't marry me. And my brother looked at me and he goes, what's that all about? And I told him, and he goes, well, that's one of the reasons why he can't marry you. But my parents accepted Stuart, no question. His parents never would refer to him as being gay. They always made excuses. Um, Even when he was dying of AIDS, it wasn't AIDS, it had to be something else. And I'm so glad that so many parents today are looking at the situation and going, look at this is my child. This is my family. I know there are families that aren't like that. I get that. And that's why these conversations are important, because as difficult it was for you to have those conversations with your siblings and your parents, you had to have them, and it was just as difficult for them. And you know what? Hopefully we can make this easier for everybody as time goes on, because we all change through the years. I am not the same person that I was in my teens or even as, a young mom. I have changed completely. And, I'm more open minded than I've ever been. Um, my mother taught me, in some ways, to be closed minded. Um, and I'm sure, Noah, you've heard stories that my mother would always say whatever she wanted to say. It didn't make any difference who was there. And then she would apologize afterwards. But then she'd say, but I have a right to say those words. Um, but that's how I grew up. And I finally realized that's not who I want to be. I want to be open. I want to understand, and I want to help other people understand. So, lastly, you two are out in the business world. Does it affect you at all?
It definitely does. I've been very lucky in that I was in the closet for most of my professional career, and then when I started a software engineering instruction job that is, a few years ago, I decided, okay, I'm gonna first day on the job, I'm going to talk to my boss and just come out and just let her know that I am a transgender woman. I use she, her pronouns. Like, it's not on my legal documentation at the time. And when I told her that, she went, "You are so brave," which was, it was better than I was hoping for. I mean, better than I was expecting, I should say. a little bit condescending it felt at the time. I know she meant well, but I was just, it's a better reaction would have just been, thank you for telling me. We'll update our records accordingly. But it went okay. But I did find myself facing many of the problems that many women in the workplace do, especially in the tech industry. Uh, Many of my coworkers would mansplain topics to me, assuming I was less learned, less intelligent than them because I was a woman. And I would have conflicts with some of my coworkers as well about, for example, things about pronouns. For the worst example I can think of, and I'm again very lucky that this was the worst of it, is that we had set a policy as a company that whenever a new group of students would come in, when all the instructors introduce themselves, we're going to introduce ourselves with our name and our pronouns. And the reason that we like to encourage this is because if only transgender people are, explicitly saying their pronouns, it makes them feel singled out. So you say, hello, my name is, X and my pronouns are he, him, even if it's, obvious that your pronouns should be he, him, or she, her, then that makes everybody feel safer introducing their pronouns if it's not quite as obvious. And so we're going through the line of teachers and people are saying their pronouns. And then one guy says, yeah, my name is, and doesn't say his pronouns. And one of my coworkers said, and what are your pronouns? And he just scoffed and said, I don't do that. And later we had to talk about it. And I tried to explain that, the reason we're doing this is to show, potentially genderqueer and transgender students that this is a place where they can be open about it. If they want to use pronoun, they, them pronouns, she, her pronouns, or even neo pronouns like Zer or etc., that, this is a place that that's accepted. And I don't think I ever really got through to him on that. So yeah, that's just a small example of ways that that's affected me professionally.
Yeah, I'm in. I mean, we're both in somewhat artistic industries, but I think there's a lot of art to tech, and also historically, you've been doing English, and I'm in film, theater, and podcasting, and so I think thankfully there is kind of a reputation of oh, the arts are bohemian. That's where all the weirdos are, and so historically I've had a good track record of being able to be open. I think towards the beginning, when I was a little less out, it was a bit more difficult for me. I think there are situations where I could have come out to my coworkers at, say, the film studio I was working at, but I didn't really until towards the end of when I was working there. And then I started working at a theater company where everybody introduced themselves with, this is my name, these are my pronouns. And it would get to me in the circle, and I would say, my name is Ray, and I don't know what my pronouns are. And I would just have a meltdown and just completely derail the conversation. And they would go, okay, we'll come back to Ray, moving on. And then eventually I became more comfortable saying, my name is Ray, my pronouns are she, they. And also I got a legal name change. So like my legal name is Raphael, Ray for short. And so no matter what job I apply to, it's going to be right up there that like, oh, this person's name is Raphael. That's kind of funky. I still usually go by Ray personally and professionally, but seeing Raphael on a resume is going to throw people off potentially. And so I just try to be open about like, yeah, I'm non-binary. When I was working at a Hollywood studio, I never really came out to them. I did an internship there. For the podcast listeners who can't see me, I have thick glasses. My hair is long on the top and short on the sides, and I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt, which is to say, I think most people who are in the know could probably look at me and tell that I am at the very least queer, if not non-binary. I get very excited when people I don't know refer to me by they as default, Because again, she is fine, but you can, even people in stores going, and what do they want? I'm like, haha, I've
You got
sufficiently
it.
confused you to the point where you're pretty sure they might be the safer option.
I love
And
it.
when I was working at the cafe, they asked me, what are your pronouns? And I said, she is fine, was my response at the time. And then eventually, when I came out to my manager, he said, yeah, I figured because you look like a deer in headlights when I asked for your pronouns. So, yeah, I've, for the most part, been lucky about being able to be open. Like Noah, I've only had like my worst stories I could tell are not even that bad in the grand scheme of things. The one I like to point to is one of my professors in grad school uh, said that pronouns are just a blip in the culture, which I think he meant all these weird other pronouns, and asking for pronouns was like, all pronouns are a blip in the culture?
Mhm.
Just seems like kind of a weird blanket statement.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people on Twitter and such are angry saying, I don't have pronouns, don't use pronouns for me. And it's like, so what should I call you?
Yeah, it's like, do you want me to just refer to you like Marcus said that for Marcus's dinner, Marcus was going to, like, do you really not want me to use any pronouns for you? But everyone just kind of, the air got sucked out of the room when the professor said pronouns are a blip in the culture.
Yeah.
And then he left the room, and our program coordinator came in, and we were talking, and one of my fellow students went, Ray, I'm sorry to be asking this after I've known you for a year, but like, can you just refresh my memory? You use she and they pronouns, right? And I said, well, I don't know. Pronouns are just a blip in the culture. And everyone just like slammed their head down on the desk. I'm grateful that that is the most embarrassing, awkward, offensive thing that has happened to my face. Like, it could have been much worse, and it possibly will be much worse in my life. But people are trying to figure things out and be more respectful, and I think we are headed in a good direction.
Well, I will tell you, since we've been doing these shows, we do another one called Be Bold, Be Heard. And it is the podcaster is a gay man from California, originally from Minnesota, living in California. He's in the film industry. Um, and somebody said to me, no, he can't be gay. He doesn't look it, he doesn't act it. But Karen, when did you become gay? And I looked at this person and I said, excuse me? I said, I'm not, but it's what did you see? What did I do? Oh no, you just look it. And I just thought that was interesting. We all think there is a look. And yeah, when you talk about, um, in the theater does embellish. Okay. But that doesn't mean that's what we all look like. And that's how we all act. And that's how we all talk. So I just am grateful to learn more. Um, and, if somebody wants to believe I'm gay, that's fine. You know, doesn't matter to me. I'm very happy in the way I am. I think I know who I am. And if I don't by this time, I'm out of luck. So, but I'm grateful that the two of you are going down this journey and going down it together. You sound like you have a great community of friends. And is that what you recommend to others who are um, trying to come out? Is joining the community? Is that what is the most helpful?
Absolutely. A term that gets used a lot in our community is your found family, because we believe that family is more than just who you're related to by blood. And there are many people I know who I would consider part of my found family. Again, I'm lucky enough that all my blood relatives have been so supportive, but I am I also have family that I'm not related to at all. but I consider no less close because of that, because we share this bond. So if you are, scared of coming out, scared of scared of that, if you have your found family, or at least, starting to find it, that's going to make a world of difference for you.
Yeah, I think when people talk about support groups, I think there's kind of a view of, we're all sitting in plastic chairs in a circle and confessing something about ourselves. But I think having a support network is just great for your mental health and also just great socially. Like, I'm in a lot of, I guess, support network sounds a little bit less ominous than support group. I'm in a lot of support networks on Facebook of people I have never met and may never meet in person. I actually have been to some conventions where I got to meet some of my best friends for the first time and only time. And there's pictures of us all, waving together, obviously pre-pandemic. And sometimes what we come to talk to each other about is, my family just said this awful thing to me. I would really like some support. But sometimes you come in to say, I made the best pasta and I want everyone to look at the pasta I made. Do you have pasta recipes? Let me know. Like, it's not just about having people to commiserate with, it's also having people to share your happiness with.
Mm-hmm.
And just having that group as you're preparing to come out, or even as you're questioning, what is my identity, is very important. But even long after you've done the first big coming out, we in the community, we talk a lot about, like, coming out is not a finite process. You're always coming out to everybody you meet.
Absolutely.
But even after that big leap of, I'm going to present myself outwardly, it's still just nice to have people around you to talk to.
Yeah. And kind of springing off on that, this is maybe a little off topic, but I do want to bring this up, is the best part of having that community is joy. And I think in media and, the news and everything like that, we tend to focus on the trauma of coming out, the trauma of being queer, the scary stuff. And that it's true, that does exist, and people need to become aware of it. But there's so many little moments that can really bring you joy when you're in a community that accepts you and really sees you as you are. And we're lucky enough that they're starting to get more representation that shows trans people and queer people not just as these tragic figures, but as people who have interests and fun. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Well, I have to apologize to Ray, and I'm going to do this publicly because I commented on Facebook questioning one of your journeys that you're on right now. And I did not mean to question it. Um, I just wanted you to know that, sometimes, we can look for something real deeply and we may need it, we may not. And whether you find the answers on that journey that you're on, I support you, but don't give up being the person you are if you don't get all the answers you're looking for.
Well, thank you
So,
very much. And I don't mind saying out loud for audience's benefit, I'm in my journey to figure out labels and identities. I am currently seeking an autism diagnosis, or autism spectrum diagnosis, and I have no idea whether or not I'm on the spectrum. And I think part of the conversation around is, like, do you need to know whether or not you are? And my current position is just, I got a funky little brain, is what I like to call it. And, like, with or without a diagnosis, like, it would be nice to have, um, people say labels are for soup cans, but I like soup. I like,
love that.
if as long as the label is something you're embracing and not something that was foisted upon you, it's nice to have that community. But I think with or without the diagnosis, I've been recognizing that there are areas in my life that I have been minimizing myself and trying to make myself more palatable to other people. And I am working on that process of trying to figure out who I actually am without that mask. So Yeah, it's just there's a lot of, whether it's mental health or queerness, gender, sexuality, etc. Like we're all trying to learn more about how we identify and how we want to present ourselves to the world.
Absolutely. So again, I know a lot of great people on the spectrum. So, but I wish the two of you a lot of luck, happiness. Hopefully, this pandemic will be over soon and we can all get outside. I know Chicago is pretty locked down, so I know my son in Chicago. I don't think he's left his condo more than a half a dozen times in the last year.
Mm.
So take care of yourselves. Keep in touch. Ray, I'm going to send you somebody's name who is in the industry that may be a good contact for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
I
And
look,
stay safe yourself.
Yeah, thank
all
you so
right.
much. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you. You guys take care now. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.